Call the meeting to order. Kevin, would you like to lead us in the pledge tonight? Would you like to lead us in the pledge tonight?
It just reminded me like 2 minutes ago. Yes, I would love to lead us in the pledge. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Let the roll reflect. Now the roll can reflect that all board members are present. Sorry about that, Mr. Wood. And item 5, public comments related to agenda items.
President Owens, there are no public comments related to the agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If you would bow your heads and join me for our invocation. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the blessing to serve this district. Thank you for the opportunity to serve these children, these families. Lord, I pray that you would give us wisdom and discernment, allow us to do our work with your will and your might in our hearts and our minds. Lord, bless each of our teachers this summer, each of our students, each of our families. Just keep them safe in their travels. Let them enjoy their time off, and pray for blessings upon each of them. In Christ's name, amen. All right, item 7, notifications. Resignations.
Yes, good evening. This is just no action needed, notifications only. Resignations can be on page 9 of the board book. And also new hires, 10 through, I think, page 13. We are working in the HR department to get our new hires started.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Item 8 is our consent agenda. Does anyone need anything pulled for review in our consent agenda tonight? If there's not, then I would entertain a motion. So moved. So moved Jeff Wood, second Ann Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item 9 is consider and act on the superintendent's evaluation. And it's an absolute privilege to have some discussion about this tonight. We, as a board, have had the opportunity to work through Ms. Cordell's review, to work through the analysis of each of our strategic objectives for Ms. Cordell, and to talk about the way in which it was done. And it was exceptional without question in all regards. And we're thankful for her service to our students, and just a blessing to be able to share that with the community. So with that being said, I would entertain any comments or a motion.
Make a motion that we act on the superintendent evaluation as exceptional.
So moved Amy Smith, second Ann Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Item 10 is to consider and act on an amendment to our superintendent's contract. Background here, when we were fortunate enough to bring Ms. Cordell on as our superintendent, we had made a commitment at that time to support her efforts to grow her educational background and to receive her doctorate. And consistent with that, we're amending her contract, or we're proposing an amendment to her contract tonight that would allow us to compensate and reimburse her for those educational expenses to go and add her doctorate to her existing education. So that's the presentation of that amendment. And if there's any questions or discussion.
Move to approve the amendment as presented.
Jason James makes the motion.
Second.
Marvin Bobo seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item 11 is consider and act on auxiliary staff recruitment incentive.
Good evening. So as Anna shared earlier, the HR department has been very busy. We know that it's a very competitive hiring field out there for all areas in education, and the HR and business team and custodial operations met recently to talk about what we could do about various vacancy rates that we're experiencing in auxiliary services. We are excited that we'll be having a job fair on July 23rd. We've decided to have it on a Saturday this time to try to attract more folks to come in. And as we discussed several of the strategies that we wanted to implement to try to fill the vacancy rates that we currently have that range anywhere from 15 to 40%. Just trying to be cognizant of anything we can do during the summer to build that back up prior to school starting. One of the recommendations that was made was for a referral incentive. So we did do this briefly for transportation last summer, and so wanted to maximize the opportunity of using an incentive for employees, any employees, to refer somebody who is hired on in the auxiliary services. If they stay for 30 days, then the employee who refers them would receive an incentive of $300. So we think that would help us draw folks in for that prior to the job fair on the 23rd. So if we implement that now during the summer, we might have the greatest opportunity to bring folks in for next school year. So is our recommendation at this time to consider the implementation of that incentive program.
Other questions for?
Are there any other strategies that you're considering?
We've discussed a lot of strategies. We talked about with the job fair, because they did a great job of putting on the job fair for us earlier this year. And some of the learnings from that experience were that we need to do it on a weekend. We need to try some different things. And we've talked about possibilities of outsourcing portions if we had to. That's an expensive endeavor. And so actually it was kind of one of the recommendations from the HR group to look at a hiring incentive.
We're
I don't know if
also
you wanna add.
we're also going to really push it. We're working on an infograph on things that make us special. And we do today, we're also doing, we're going to touch base with some of the, like the McKinney trade days the weekend before a job fair, passing out pamphlets, just also emailing the entire staff and doing some email blasts. We're having signs made with a QR code. So if we can get them to fill out a Google Doc and get their phone number, then we can kind of hassle them a little bit. So we actually have a list of some things that we're hoping to do. It's a tough market right now. So in the past, we've gone to other places and hung up signs, and I don't think they won't let us anymore because they're trying to recruit them too. I mean, wait staff, everything. So we're hoping to make some, good dents into that. So.
I think this is good. I feel like things are turning a little bit when it comes to
Yeah.
hard to fill positions. Just anecdotally, I hear high school kids that are having trouble finding jobs where everybody was begging for them
Yeah.
a few months ago and things of that nature. So I'm hopeful that we'll have better turnout this time. And I think this is probably a good
I think
incident.
Dr. Tinsley may have some openings there too. For the LCBC, so
Yep.
for high school kids.
Good question, good comments. Any others? If not, I'd entertain a motion. So move Marvin Bobo. Second, Jason James, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Consider an act on the Texas COVID Learning Acceleration Supports T-Class Program, MOU, Decision 5.
As you recall back early in February, y'all had passed the first part, Decision 5, which is where we use our T-Class grant. We work with TMUC Commerce, and they provide paid residencies. So they do that for 2 years, full school years. This actually is working with them along with, we work with a technical advisor, and they help us with a pipeline to continue that program. And basically, we're committed to one person. We're hoping to build a good pipeline so we can recruit teachers to fill vacancies and they can learn our system. We get to know them. Well, it's a 1-year residency, so we can also use them when they're not in classes. They could be aides, they could be substitutes. So it's basically about $20,000 a year, less than what we're paying. And we really get to know them. It's kind of like an intern. It's basically an internship and training. So we're pretty excited about that. So we would be working with Region 10. We've already made those contacts and we've already started working with them. So our recommendation, of course, is to act on this MOU, consider an act on it. Okay. Yeah, so
I
we're
really like
recommending-
this program.
I do
think it
too.
gives us an opportunity to be proactive and go after folks early in their career and then
Right.
acclimate them to our systems and our processes and our culture so that they're
We
a
know
little
that
more-
they're a good fit for us.
bring them up in our process. So,
So,
and it's
yeah.
great that we're receiving money to offset the expense of doing it.
Yeah.
So,
Also, there's also a paid mentorship for our teachers that work with them of $5,000, which is also nice.
that's nice as well.
Yeah.
Any,
I don't see any downside.
no. Any questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we consider an act on the Texas COVID Learning Acceleration Support Program.
So we have a motion to accept and enter into the MOU.
Second that.
Second, and so motion, Amy Smith, second, Ann Smith, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item 13, consider an act on staff development day waiver.
Good evening. As you know, the state of Texas requires students to attend school for 76,500 minutes. They do allow us a couple of opportunities to take away from that, for lack of a better term, take away from that 76,500 minutes. And one of those opportunities is through professional development days. They allow us to use 2,100 minutes of professional development in place of those 76,500. And if you do the math, that equals out to 7 hours a day for 5 days. So we need to get those approved and bring those to your attention for action to be approved for us to use these days. There is a typo in your board book. It says January 1st. Not only is January 1st a Sunday, but it's a big ask to ask teachers to come in on New Year's Day. So that should say January 2nd. But those, yeah, those 5 days are September 6th, November 7th, November 8th, January 2nd, and February 17th. So each one of those will be 420 minutes per day for 5 days, which equals up to the 2,100 minutes. So we're just asking for you to approve those 5 days.
And we already have no school those days. This is just kind of bookkeeping.
It allows us to apply those to the.
Apply the
2,100.
2,100
I just
minutes
wanted
to
to
the
clarify
sentence.
for people watching. that-
That's right. That will not impact the school days. It just allows us how we want to use those minutes.
Perfect, thanks.
Need a motion? So moved. So moved, and we'll just note that January 2nd versus January 1st as one of those 5 dates. Second, Jason James. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, Item 14, School Health Advisory Council 2021-2022 Annual Report.
I just wanted to review kind of what we have accomplished over the past few months in our SHAC, or our Student Health Advisory, School Health Advisory Council meetings that we've had. We kind of got off to a late start with all the shuffling in the central office. We had the committee approved, but we were ready to have our first meeting, and then we had an ice storm. So that pushed us back a little bit further. But I wanted to just kind of go through and take you through from the first meeting all the way until where we are right now. We did have 4 meetings scheduled. We are required to have 4 meetings per year. One of them was canceled due to bad weather, and we did accomplish the other 3 of those meetings on March 3rd, April 27th, and May 18th. A little bit, something that's different that we've been tasked, not really tasked with, but the rules have kind of changed as far as the SHAC is now the state of Texas asks us to post the meetings, just like we would any open meeting. We don't have to follow all of the Open Meetings Act, but we do, such as we don't have to allow public comments. But there are portions of the Open Meetings Act that we do have to follow, such as posting and having an agenda. We also, let's see here. What they have asked us to do is, of course, review the health curriculum that we have done. It also, in which I'll talk about in just a little bit, bring forth recommendations for the human sexuality curriculum, things such as that. Because of the new asks of the state of Texas, we thought it would be good in the first meeting that we had to go back and make sure that we were going through the proper steps, proper protocols, and we had bylaws that we followed very closely because of the items that we were going to be bringing forward to you over the next few months. So on that first meeting that we had, the members of the committee went through, we re-evaluated what bylaws that we had, made any changes to those, and then approved any new bylaws. And so, and in your board book, there is a link that you can go in and view the bylaws, and all those are posted on our website as well. Underneath our student health tab on our website, you can go in and review all the meetings. One of the other requirements is that we have to record, either audio record, video record, or both the meetings, and post those online as well. And so under that same page, we do have an audio recording of all of the SHAC meetings that we've had up to this point. It also asks us to create or name a parent liaison / co-chairperson. We're very fortunate to have Melanie Dykstra on our committee, and she was voted in as the parent liaison co-chairperson. So from time to time upon this, throughout this next year, she may be coming up and doing some of the presentations for our SHAC committee and visiting with you guys, sharing with you what we've discussed throughout this upcoming year. We did recreate and kind of brand what our mission and vision are, and those are in your board book as well. Because again, we are having some different asks from the state of Texas, and we wanted to make sure that our mission and vision are in line with those. The biggest thing that I wanted you guys to understand and know that what we've had different discussions about is making sure that whatever recommendations we make to you reflect the values of this community. And that is why the makeup of the committee is so important. And the requirement is the majority of that committee is made up of community members. We had this last year, we also, of course, had teachers and staff. We had one student who was a very, very integral part in the communications and conversations that we had on the committee. Going forward, we'll have two students because that student last year graduated. We'll have two more students who are added to the committee, but a majority of our committee members are representatives from the community. Some of the goals that we had and which we will carry through are also in your board book. We're looking at health and physical education, the curriculum there, school health communication, making sure that we communicate to parents what students are learning in our schools through our health curriculum, and also the social emotional wellness that our counselors share with our students, with our teachers through our SEL programs as well. And so because we got a little bit of a late start, we want to make sure that we, in my opinion, goals and objectives, they're only good when you accomplish them. And if you don't have time to really invest in those, it doesn't do you any good to move on. So if you do that, it's kind of doing it just to look good. So we want to make sure that we do these well. So we're going to keep these goals for the 22-23 school year, make sure that we get a good foundation in those goals before we move on to something new. We had Ms. Mary Mullen, who was our director of secondary curriculum. She presented our health curriculum materials and presented what the adoption process is to the SHAC members. They reviewed them, made recommendations. The members were provided access to be able to review those materials. And then the members also discussed what their observations were, what their preferences were, what concerns they may have with the health curriculum, and what things that they liked as well. And they did that in the May meeting. And so what our next steps are is for the approval of a SHAC resolution, which I'll present to you in just a second, which is the next next item on the agenda. And then also setting meeting dates for the 22-23 school year, which will be posted on our website. Really, the SHAC committee is not doing anything different as far as how they go about their business. I think the steps that the state of Texas asked us to do is just make sure that we're being as transparent as possible with our community and putting pieces in place to ensure that happens. So we want to make sure that we, whether they put those in place or not, we want to make sure that we are as transparent as we can possibly be. Any questions on the SHAC committee?
Thank you for the details. All right, if there are no further questions, we'll move on to item 15. Consider an act on the School Health Advisory Council resolution.
So I'm just going to read you a little bit what's in the executive summary, as you can see, but ensure that the community can read, will know what it says as well. As pursuant to section 28.004, school boards are required to establish a local school health advisory council and to approve the members of this council that will assist the district in ensuring that local community values are reflected in the district's health education instruction. Additionally, new legislation was passed during the 87th Texas legislative session that requires school boards to adopt a policy to establish the process for adoption of human sexuality curriculum materials. House Bill 1525 requires the policy to include board adoption of a resolution approving the members of the SHAC and convening the SHAC for the purpose of making recommendations regarding human sexuality instruction. The resolution being recommended by the district will approve and authorize the members of the 2022-2023 School Health Advisory Council, as well as approve and authorize the SHAC to bring forth recommendations to the board, including but not limited to the recommendations regarding the appropriate grade levels and methods of the instruction of human sexuality. In addition to that, there will be two meeting dates. Those are going to be July 20th and August 24th between now and when we bring recommendations to you. And with that being said, I would be happy to read, if you would like for me to, the resolution that you guys have before you. Otherwise, what that resolution states are the members of the board of the SHAC committee, as well as tasking the SHAC committee to bring you recommendations for human sexuality.
I don't think it's necessary to read it. We've all had it in our board book unless you guys have questions specifically about that resolution. Thank you. So I want to step back just a minute, board, if you don't mind. I want to step back and accept the annual report that was given in the previous item. It's not written that way, but I'd like for us to have it on record that we accepted the annual report before we vote on this resolution. So I would need a motion to accept the annual report as presented. Ann Smith moves to accept the annual report. Marvin Bobo seconds. All in favor? Thank you. So if you would just make sure the minutes reflect that we approved and accepted the annual report. And then the resolution as presented by Mr. Parker. The request is consider an act on the resolution. So if there's no questions, I would need a motion.
Are there a set number of members required?
No, there are no set number of members. All it says is the majority have to be made up by community members.
This is the same resolution that was presented at the June 6th workshop.
That's correct. Just with updated members.
Yeah.
So I make a motion that we consider an act on the School Health Advisory Council resolution.
So moved. Amy Smith. Second, Ann Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item 16, presentation, sorry, on middle and high school lever time and school day impact.
Okay, you've heard us, we've been talking about master scheduling, I think since January or December. And this was spoken about by Mr. Coder back, I think in May. And since Dr. Zambezi has come on board, both campuses feel like it's important to create an advisory period during the school day for students. And so they're calling it leopard time. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of information about leopard time. Again, when we look at master schedule, we're looking at how we maximize an instructional day for our students, not just your classroom time, but what are we doing to provide supports for our students within that period of the day? Many of our students are very active before and after school. They're juggling quite a bit. And so both Dr. Zambezi and Mr. Coder felt like it would be important to have some dedicated time during the day where they could increase some supports for our students. So when I'm saying advisory period here, because that's what you might see in other secondary schools schedules is advisory period. Many times that's it can be it just varies from campus to campus when that's scheduled. But the purpose of that is to provide targeted intervention and enrichment opportunities for our students, academic tutoring that may need to we may need to have. We've received feedback from staff, students, and parents that they felt like that there were some tutoring needs that we could maximize that time to use. Some of this too is also it's driven by our students' needs, not just by the teacher indicating what the students' needs are, but it could be academic, it could be social emotional, it could be just time management, learning how to prioritize, organizational skills. It also supports House Bill 4545, which is the required number of hours that we must ensure our students receive accelerated instruction if they do not pass one of the STAR tests. And also opportunities for students to participate in clubs, have student choice, access some of our areas around our school, where they may work on group projects. They may be in the library working on some projects. A teacher may want to help with a assignment, do some tutoring. So it's going to be a lot of communication back and forth between the students and the teachers. And also just some work on character traits for our kids. They're juggling quite a bit, and that's a tough time. So just some time so that our counselors and our teachers can support our kids from that standpoint as well. So the benefits for our students is that it's scheduled during the school day. Also, it's access to all staff during that period, and it will minimize some before and after school tutorials. It's directed towards specific student needs. They're determining those needs, or the teachers are helping them do that. And also just helping them manage their time and create more independence for them. What both principals would like to do, and this is why we wanted to bring it forward to you, is that in order to meet, they would really like to achieve 25 minutes, 5 days a week for high school and 4 days a week for middle school. So in order to do that, they both felt like that it would be helpful to add 5 minutes to the end of the school day. So we have worked with student services regarding transportation. It's not going to impact that. When we look at from a standpoint of teachers, it really does help where they have those kids during the school day and they're not having to, if there's not conflict with time after or before school. Willow wants it scheduled with between 4th and 5th periods, and then high school scheduled between 6th and 7th periods. And also that's probably going to help with any students that might want to leave off campus for lunch. It's keeping them there for that period. So that was something else that Dr. Zambezi pointed out. And then again, it's basically the same impact with staff to support students during the instructional day, and also with our work of learning communities and our using our teams of teachers working together where they can do some flexible grouping and support for our students too. So what we are bringing forward is that we basically would like to extend the school day for both high school and middle school by 5 minutes so that they could achieve this 25-minute period of time. Both of the principals have had experience with this in their previous districts, and they felt it was very successful. In fact, that was both of them, but it was one of the first areas when they looked at master schedules over here, that was a priority that they felt like could support our students. So questions?
So, go ahead. Go
Can
ahead.
you give me a hypothetical of what the day looks like? So say Susie's a basketball player. She goes to the high school. She's there through the 5th period. So does she report to the same teacher for this leopard time?
It could
this
vary.
between 6
It could
and 7?
vary. It's really could depend on, there will be some students, for example, I would say for students who do need to meet the House Bill 4545, we will have some very targeted time that we're ensuring that we are delivering that instruction for the students. It's really going to depend on the individual student. And I didn't want to, Dr. Zambezi has a really great presentation to present on this that he can go into more detail on that, but he gives some specific examples of how it might be used. It's a little different from what Mr. Coder had presented. So again, I don't want to steal his thunder, and what we'll try to do is in July have him come with additional information for you on
So it
that.
sounds like it could vary based on what they need, but it's not necessarily checking into one place every day.
No,
and then
it's really
going-
what I need. And we call it win time. It's what I need.
So will there still be a CAT period for those that need it at the high school?
We are offering, there will not be a CAP period. We are offering a time during the day, though, that students can go in and out. We're rebranding CAT for both of our campuses. It's still going to meet the needs that we've had in the past. It's just, I think what's happened when it was initiated several years ago, it's kind of transformed over time to not really result to what we had, what the district had originally intended for it to be. So there is still going to be CAT. It's just going to be rebranded, and we'll have more information about that as well too.
So your intention is to have advisory services possible here and during this period of time too?
Correct. Mhm.
I think it's a great idea to have this during the day.
Yeah. And we'll,
Versus,
well, I mean, it's kind of all hands on deck. And I think that was the intent of it. You know, you're not having athletic periods during that at the end of the day or and before school. It's just hard for our kiddos and our staff too.
Other questions?
And I don't know if you want to bring forward, if that needs to come to the July meeting for approval of the extended 5 minutes, we can definitely do that. If the board prefers to, have that approved, if you want to approve that.
Anybody see a need to delay the action on the item? For planning purposes, it'd be nice to give them the information, so that they.
Yeah. The idea that they'd be able to start planning that now. They have a lot of work to do between now and the start of the fall. And I love the idea of doing this during the day.
Given how we've got it listed on the agenda, I think we're in favor of the action, but we'll wait until.
Okay, we can bring it to the July meeting, no problem. We can do that. And I'll also have both principals. They'll have more details at that time. We'll arrange for them to do a presentation for both the campuses. Okay.
The hypothetical would be good. I'm just trying to process like say this is a basketball player and they've got to make up a test. Can they do that in that 25 minutes? And
could,
then what do they do the next
absolutely.
day or the
Yeah.
next day? So if you can give us something just so we can better understand and so the community can too.
Sure.
Um,
A couple things I noted here. It's
but I believe you, it's gonna be great. I
Yeah.
just want to process.
So teachers may assign students, so if they want to work with them on specific skills, if they want to do some enrichment, if they want to work on assignments, if they want to retest, those are some options. Group project time, goal setting, just some organizational help. That's what we're hearing from quite a few of our teachers. And even our students, we did here is just kind of the future ready skills that we talked about in our strategic planning.
I think it goes back to also the original strategic plan when kids said they needed margin in their lives. This is like that minute of margin where they can breathe and.
Right. And I put in there too, physical activity. That may be, I know Mr. Coder wants that to where kids just need to just go to the gym and they just need to work off some steam. I mean, they'll all be supervised. I mean, it's not where they're just, there's not going to be staff there, but it's just some opportunities like that too.
All right, thank you so
Mhm.
much. All right. 5:17. Bear with me 1 second here. All right, item 17 is open a public hearing on the budget and proposed tax rate. Now open. Dr. Duplessis.
Good evening. So this evening we'll be presenting some information on the budget for 22-23 and the proposed tax rate. And so the topics we'll talk about are another update on the current year, where we're projecting that we're going to end as updated from last month. We're going to give you an updated projection through fiscal year 26 and give you the final 22-23 budget submission.
Do we want to go ahead and hold the public hearing since we've opened the public hearing and then close the public hearing and then have
Yes.
you present?
So has anyone signed up to address us in the public hearing? No comments, no one signed up. Right. Okay. Go ahead and close the public hearing. Now,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Amy.
So again, to refresh everybody's memory on the theme that we set for creating this coming year's budget, it was reframing our story and building that around the three pillars of legacy of excellence, future ready students, and financial sustainability. So we've been talking about reframing for quite some time. And so we're excited this evening to share the results of the current year as well as our plan for the proposed budget for next year. You'll see here the milestones that we began back in November when we started discussing the goals that the board set for this coming year's budget, all the way through several of the analyses that were performed as part of the process, including demographics, capacity, looking at our staffing and compensation, and the work done around each of those areas, as well as the zero-based budgeting. So you'll see some of the big milestones that were conducted during the year for each of those items. In addition to the Financial Sustainability Committee that met quite a bit throughout that period of time and provided some recommendations to the board as well at the May 9th workshop. And so all of this work throughout that time period is culminating in what we're sharing with you this evening. So again, on our current year, very pleased to provide this final highlight for you on the 21-22 financial projection for actuals. So I have kind of separated this on this slide so you can see it most accurately. But you'll see our budget to actual here. I did want to point out that you've seen some changes throughout the year with student nutrition moving to general fund. The Child Development Center also moving to general fund. So you will see some of that reflected in some of the information that we share. Again, that has benefited us from the standpoint of the Child Development Center revenue being a portion of our general fund, as well as being able to address some of the needs to correct our coding for student nutrition, since our secondary schools don't participate in the National School Lunch Program, things of that nature. But if you look at our revenue and expenditure updates for the current year budget to actual, we're looking at a net positive position of a little over 2.2 million in the bottom right corner for the current year. So we're very excited to share that. You'll see probably the largest portion at the bottom there will stand out to you at 403,000 is actually out of student nutrition. So we're pleased that they were able to face some of the challenges this year and come out ahead. We also had some additional savings that were due to increases in collections. Also, I did want to point out that it may not seem very large, but we have been projecting a 95% attendance rate for the remainder of the year. And the final 6 weeks, we were at 95.1. So as small as that may seem, that's actually a pretty big deal for the last 6 weeks of the school year. So that helped us, as well as some additional tuition and fees, some additional payroll savings. And lastly, also, we had some holding on expenditures, just kind of reflecting on the things, even if we had them budgeted, if it was something that we could do more efficiently, finding ways in which to do that. So excited about how we were able to finish this year. And again, just a visual representation of each of those significant milestones throughout the year. So as we start shifting into the 22-23 budget, I just want to revisit the assumptions that we've been building up over the last several months to create this budget, so you know what's included in it. We continually update this projection and our plans for next year based on the information we receive from the county on our property values. We did complete the demographic assessment, and we did use our low to moderate in between enrollment growth projection from that demographer. And we're literally within about less than 10 students off from what we're seeing right now from registration, which is pretty phenomenal. So our adjusted TPAR adjustments and our attendance, like I said before, we've updated that for all of our actuals for the current year. And we are using a 95.5% attendance rate for 22-23 as we plan to implement some programming around promoting attendance, and then at 96% for 22-23 and beyond. So hopefully we're able to achieve a higher attendance rate more in alignment with some of our neighboring districts. We also have folded in about $1.4 million in staffing efficiency savings post the implementation and analysis from the TASB staffing efficiency study. So some efficiencies had already been put into place this year, and these were additional savings identified to go into next year as a result of the study and then the analysis and the work that was done really on either side of me around figuring out what we could do to approach our staffing as efficiently as possible next year. This budget also includes the approved 22-23 Lovejoy Scholar Program. At the original targets that we set at the time, that was at a 65% retention rate and a returning of 17 new scholars to replace our senior graduating scholars. I'm pleased to say that we've had far better than that turnout. And so we have some potential favorability. We don't really know what will happen with some of those students. You know, some of them will change their mind over the summer. I don't know why they would, but we have a potential favorability of maybe around 450,000 that could occur if all of that does see through. What that does give us is the opportunity to have something to offset potential costs for inflation. As I shared before, for 22-23, we don't have an across the board inflation number in our budget. So that program will offer us some of that risk mitigation. Our other assumptions in the budget are rolling the 21-22 supplemental step increase that teachers received this year into their salary and creating their next step at an additional 1% increase for next year. All other staff would also receive a 1% increase. We did complete the equity and market comparison assessment. So there will be a few adjustments on individual employees that would need an equity or market adjustment. For the outer years of the projection we're going to share, we have now been able to move because of the progress we've made in the past year to a 2% assumption in future years for 23, 24 and beyond. So we're continuing to do the work and evaluate what we can potentially look at in future years. One of the other assumption was retaining the new zero-based budget level. You may remember when we reviewed the results of what all of the campus and department leaders did in the zero-based budgeting process, we were looking at a savings of $300,000 going into next year, which is no small task given that our budgets are primarily driven by payroll. So there's less opportunity on that side, but very, very proud of the work that they've done there to help contribute to as much efficiency as possible in next year. And so this is our 6-year baseline projection for the general fund. And so if you look across the board, we've kind of revisited these each year. We're projecting now that we're going to end just barely over 90 days of fund balance this year, which is really great. The difficulty is if we continue as accurately on the projection side from an enrollment and attendance perspective as we've had to date, that means that by fiscal year 25-26, we'll be down to 65 days of fund balance ending. That's important because this year or last year, we ended the fiscal year with 74 days of fund balance. And we really had to stretch to make December payroll. So with this projection ending fiscal year 26 with 65 days of fund balance truly means at that point, we would have to take a loan to make December payroll. So as we look at that projection and start to think about what different options are available to us, the next projection that you'll see is based on a voter approved tax ratification election option available to the district to increase the tax rate by 3.17 cents, which is actually pretty small. If you look at some of the other VATRE additional cents, but this is what is reflected in the current budget. And if you look at our fiscal year 26, again, that would have us ending at 80 days of fund balance in fiscal year 26. Definitely not the 90. That's kind of the normal standard and not the 120 that really should be our standard given the fact that we rely on local tax collections. And so we have to float from the beginning of the year until December when we start seeing those collections in earnest. So still some things that we have to do and some work ahead of us even with that, but it certainly gives us a better opportunity for some sustainability. I also wanted to highlight another item that's become a large conversation with the fact that we have our increasing values really throughout Collin County and the Metroplex as a whole. But this baseline, I've highlighted that line item for excess revenue or recapture. And so this again is the baseline projection without the additional 3.17 cents on the tax rate. You'll see in fiscal year 22, we paid $364,804 in recapture. In fiscal year 26, you'll see it's over 6.4 million. The reason for this is our tax collections our tax values continue to increase, thereby increasing our collections, thereby decreasing our state revenue and putting us over the threshold of per student revenue that we should be receiving on a tier 1 basis, because our student population, if you follow that number, is decreasing. So that combination is leading to a significant increase in recapture. That's not uncommon. A lot of districts are talking about this right now. It's just a difficult situation for districts where our student enrollment isn't increasing. However, our values are. It's just going to continue to increase that recapture. But part of the reason why we wanted to point this out is if you look at the next slide, that projection is showing with the VATRE what that recapture would be. And so with that projection, we'd be ending fiscal year 26 with the excess revenue for recapture of a little over 7 million. So yes, the number is a little bit higher. It goes from 6.4 to a little over 7 million. But if you also look at the total revenue figure, it goes from the 47 million to the 48.1 million. So as we've talked about this revenue opportunity for several months, that would still represent the $500,000 to $600,000 in excess revenue that it would generate, even though recapture is going up. The net on an annual basis is pretty consistent. So in talking about recapture, again, that's just driven by the increase in property values and decreasing enrollment, or even enrollment being steady at a lesser increase or even a smaller increase than the property values. A lot of districts around us may be slightly increasing and still have increasing costs of recapture just because it's less than the increase in the property values. So it's been kind of an interesting situation on the VATRE side. On the tier 2 side, that increase in property values also does actually increase the yield of your enrichment pennies. So not necessarily a bad thing. We're seeing a whole lot more districts looking at this, basically that are facing the same kind of situations. And again, it's going to still continue to show that $500,000 to $600,000 in excess revenue for the district year over year. So at this time, we're going to share some information about the proposed tax rate. We will not actually adopt the tax rate until August, but we do set out a proposed tax rate so you can see what we're building the budget on. So the M&O rate is $1.0367. The INS rate would be at 50 cents and the total rate would be at the $1.5367. Our current rate is $1.5050. So you can see pretty quickly that rate is reflecting that 3.17 cents additional. And as I said before, the maximum compressed rate, or MCR, is not released by TEA until I believe August 5th. So we have a very short turnaround between that and the August board workshop. But that is our intention, is to actually adopt the rate at that workshop once we have our maximum compressed rate from the state. So what we do essentially is we estimate based on some state estimates that are provided on what that compressed rate would be, so that we can build our budget on that $1.5367 minus a little bit of compression that we're estimating and building that budget around that. So you may have seen the rate to maintain on the newspaper published posting. That was $1.6294.6. Essentially what that is typically we used to do the rate to maintain on several of our other postings on the website, but now we have to use the no new revenue tax rate. That does create some confusion. So I thought I would just point out that the no new revenue rate that you'll see of $1.202658 on the tax rate worksheets do not take into account tier 1 and tier 2 local versus state payments or recapture. So that's really supposed to give, the no new revenue tax rate is supposed to give you an apples to apples comparison. Really, if you were getting all of your funding from local collections, and what would the rate be compared to the prior year levy to produce the same amount of revenue. That's where the no new revenue tax rate comes of the $1.22658. Unfortunately, there's a whole lot more complication in the state revenue calculations. So that rate to maintain that you see on the newspaper clipping is probably a lot more accurate comparison. That's what we use to say this is what the rate would be if we were going to generate the same amount of revenue. That rate to maintain is $1.629460. So even the proposed tax rate of $1.5367 is less than that. And that's reflected in some of the efficiencies that we put into place in the budget process. So we've also provided a breakdown of just the tax rate timeline piece in and of itself. So again, as I said, on the 5th, TEA will issue a preliminary maximum compressed rate. So on the 8th would be the time where we would adopt our tax rate and order an election for November. We would post information following that. The state does require that for any VATRE, you use the November uniform election date. So oftentimes, as I know, I wondered when I got my tax bill is what is this going to cost the homeowners? So using just the average home ISD taxable value in 2021, after all of the reductions and so forth are taken out of that tax bill, that amount was $639,557. So if we're using that 3.17 cent calculation, the increase in the annual tax bill would be about $195. The increase in the homestead exemption from the 25,000 to the 40,000 that was passed by the tax or by the voters in May would provide an average reduction of $231. So essentially, the 3.17 cents would yield a lesser increase than the decrease received from the increase in the homestead exemption. The kicker is the increase in your values, which everybody's experiencing. So given that same property value, just to give you an idea, an approximate 8% increase in those values equals $739. So that's where we're all seeing the largest ups and downs in our tax bills. It's not really the 3 cents on the rate or the $25,000 to $40,000 in the homestead exemption when you're comparing it with the fluctuation in the values. So this is our 22-23 functional expense budget. So the board is to approve 3 budgets by fund and function. Those are student nutrition, general fund, and debt service. So this incorporates everything, so you can see it all together. And then we have some additional slides that kind of separate them out. But if you see the adopted 21-22 budget, the net position there ending for adopted was $69,220. So essentially saying that was how far it would be ahead. Our proposed 22-23 budget has an excess net position. So it's a positive budget, not a deficit budget, to the tune of $2,077,273. So you can see the budget swing changes there for each of those functions compared to the prior year. So you'll see, I'll kind of hit some highlights on the general fund slide because that's where you'll probably see the biggest differences. But looking at our expenditures across the board, you'll see that they're lower in some of those areas. But you'll also notice that our, like I pointed out before, our cost for recapture goes up. So you'll see some of those changes. I think we highlighted some of those last month. And there hasn't been a huge significant change in the projection overall, just sharing updated information.
Can you remind me what the expenses on community services are?
So our community service expenses, that's going to include anything that we do outside of basically providing outside services to students. So it could be social services, things like that. I don't know if you want to highlight anything else that we've. Oh. So those are currently are now under function 61 where they weren't before.
And then the contracted services between schools, that was another one that increased.
That's the recapture.
Got it.
So that's the functional expense budget in total and then by general fund. And then we've also pulled out student nutrition to highlight that. And so we will be going back to our regularly scheduled program and not on the seamless summer option next year, barring any other updates. But we're hopeful that we'll be able to, since we had so many families choose to participate this year at the elementary level, and we're really hoping we'll be able to keep them engaged in the student nutrition program. But we're looking at a balanced budget for student nutrition proposed for 22-23 at $17,551,065. So we're looking at a slight increase there in revenue and expenditures compared to current year.
We were positive over 400 something thousand this year. That was because of the national program.
It was partly because of increased participation from the SSO. It was also because of payroll savings from having reduced staffing levels.
And this, now we're proposing basically to be balanced.
Correct. So we're hoping that our incentive for recruitment will help. But if not, we know that this current year, we were able to consider doing some things with attendance incentives that may be appropriate next year, depending on how the rest of that turns out in terms of recruiting and hiring before the school year. So again, for the debt service piece, y'all may remember that back to the first report when we were shared the accountability ratings that we received. One of the things that Lovejoy doesn't get as many points on our financial accountability as other districts do is in terms of our debt load to our assets. So we do have some opportunities. We'll look at some of our strategies, especially more in depth, probably in July and August, that we can implement. As you see our debt service collections, we may be able to do some things to do some early payoffs. And so we'll be bringing forth some strategies for that this coming year and kind of reviewing what we can do on that side as well.
It's encouraging to see that our proposal is $500,000 less in interest expense. I mean, that's good savings from what we've already been doing. So.
So any questions so far? We kind of hit the highlights on the projections as a whole, but all the efficiencies that we've been able to implement in our current year and that we have built into the projection for next year are about $2.3 million in total of all the annualized amounts. That base year projection led to a deficit budget in fiscal year 24, 86 days of fund balance in fiscal year 25, and 65 days in fiscal year 26, which led to the use of the VATRE projection. That still results in a small deficit budget in 25 and 26, but fund balance above 90 days through fiscal year 25 and gives us some time to kind of look at other things that we may be able to do or other assumptions that may change between now and then. And just as a side note, we're still hoping that we'll be able to achieve the percentages of attendance that we built into the projection. But if a 1% decrease were to occur in any of those given years, we'd be looking at a $285,000 additional need in either revenue or expenditure reduction. So that completes the presentation on the proposed tax rate and budget for 22-23. Be happy to answer any additional questions.
Say something about the 21-22 budget, which is thank you, because you guys, you and your team, all of you, took a budget that was intended to essentially be balanced budget, and it was going to result in a $69,200 surplus. And we're ending the year on a $2.2 million. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, $2.2 million surplus. So I think that's a phenomenal job in achieving the efficiencies across all departments. And I know you led that effort, and Katie, you supervise that effort. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Broadest of strokes for the 22-23 budget. I mean, the proposed budget that's being considered and will be approved tonight you're expecting another $2 million surplus in next year's budget.
That's
Correct.
correct.
There questions, comments?
I have one question, and you might have answered it. So if you did, I apologize. So when we're talking about the CDC, the current budget has that operating at a profit as a revenue generator.
That's correct.
And does that include, I remember a few meetings ago, we received a grant, which I understood potentially allow us to run the CDC cost-free next year. Is that baked into this budget, or is that just the performance of the CDC as a revenue generator above expenses?
So we have estimated that we would achieve a certain portion of that grant. We haven't estimated achieving all of it because we have to submit all those expenses and have them approved. But most of it is in there. And so we've identified the expenditures that we can essentially recode. So not only, what that means is not only is the Child Development Center operating in and of itself as a revenue generation opportunity as it was initially intended. But on top of that, we're able to recoup some of that and have built that into our projections.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So the 65 days, just to reiterate to the community, that's, we can't make our obligations at 65 days.
That's
Um,
correct.
So that's, in fact, not an option. Really don't have questions, statements. Any other questions, folks?
2.3 million surplus that you're projecting for next year, is that assuming that the VATRE passes?
Yes.
Do we know what that number would be for next year if the VATRE does not pass?
So the VATRE is going to yield us, so we
That
would be
was on
looking at the
Love's.
baseline projection.
Yeah.
So, I don't have my slides numbered. But essentially, we'd be looking. Let's see if I can flip back through there.
Looks like 1.5.
One
Is it?
point.
Yeah, I see it.
Right. So we know that the VATRE as a whole is going to net us 500 to 600,000 per year, depending on any given year. But what it does is gives us an opportunity to rebuild that fund balance to a healthy level where we would be able to make that payroll in 25, 26 without a loan.
So simply put, the chief reason for the VATRE is to take some bite out of the increased recapture amounts that are going to really start going crazy in 24, 25, and 26.
That's correct.
And allow us to maintain a fund balance that you have projected with the VATRE option of 110 days in fiscal year 23, 108 days in fiscal year 24, 98 days in fiscal year 25, and still at least projected to be 80 days in fiscal year of 26 when recapture jumps significantly.
Correct.
It's going to jump regardless. It's a matter of how much
I know.
funding are we as taxpayers going to say that we want our funding model to pay us per student out of our tax dollars. And the TRE allows us to increase that base amount or that tier 2 amount upward by the amount that we internally in this district decide that we're going to fund our schools at. So ultimately, we're saying that we're going to raise what the funding cap is per student internally. Recapture is going to happen either way.
Sure.
And I can see the confusion that our community members will have around the convoluted mindset that you have to think through to understand that idea. But it is what it is. So with all those questions, I'd consider a motion if we have no further questions.
Are we moving right now to approve this budget as presented, including recommending a VATRE?
Correct.
And so one thing I remember we saw a couple of meetings ago was the historical tax rates. And I think maybe it's worth talking about a little bit as we get ready to approve this. is that the community voted years ago, I think back in 2015 or so, to approve a VA TRE previously. What year was it, Marvin? Do you remember? 16. So in 16, we had done this previously and the community supported it, got ourselves to a level basically to what we're proposing now. And I remember seeing those graphs, and then the compression came in a subsequent legislative session that compressed us back down and took away what the community had previously supported. So
The community ultimately voted and agreed that they would fund our schools at a level consistent at $1.67. So even at $1.53, we're
Got it.
14 cents below what previously we have said that we would be willing to utilize as a tax rate within this district to fund our schools.
Right.
The mechanisms have changed through that compression and state aid and state funding and all of that.
and property values have changed too, to be fair.
Right. But the relevance of the point is,
We're
what
trying to
you
get
said.
back closer to where we were previously from a rate standpoint.
we're adding to it to get to it. Yes, the amount we can efficiently.
Yeah.
We don't have the same flexibility anymore because it's been taken away politically.
Right.
But the 3.17 is available to us to add to it, which ultimately increases the funding per student we can keep.
And allows us to project raises for teachers beyond what we've been able to do the last
Correct.
couple of years, doing, not even getting to where I think a lot of us would like to get to, but at least projecting a 2% raise after this year moving forward.
We had three focal points in our budgeting this year around our goals. One is to augment fund balance so that we could get to 90 days sustainably. And two is to take care of our educators, our staff, our administration, and be able to attempt to put our best foot forward to retain those folks.
Right.
And this 3.17 cents directly goes towards those two things. Specifically, without it, in 6 years, we're projecting insolvency. I wouldn't say insolvency like bankruptcy, but we're borrowing money to make payroll, which is not an option. So we have overturned every stone we can turn. We've left no stone unturned in revamping the dollars that we're expending to operate our schools and educate children as efficiently as possible. And before we went to a taxpayer to say, hey, we're going to need to increase the tax rate, we wanted to ensure that we'd gone through a process that had done all those things. And as you step back to those two specific goals we had in the process we've undertaken, as well as our budgeting, our sustainability process, from that, we've been able to garner their recommendations of this action, as well as the analysis that's reflected the necessity of it.
I understand. I hear some people talk about the foundation, and so people are willing to say, hey, people can just donate through the foundation, and then we don't have these issues of recapture, and we have these things. So can talk for just 10 seconds about why we can't use the foundation for some of the things as far as M&O ongoing, paying teachers and those sort of things, because it's not feasible to budget that way. And maybe it just, because I know that comes up where people ask the questions, well, couldn't we just do it in a different way where we keep all the dollars versus having to send anything back to the state?
Yes, it's great that we have a foundation that helps support a lot of the things that we want to do in the district. And I think the struggle is that because our recapture is increasing so substantially, and frankly, not a lot of people want to donate to send money back to the state. We're trying to find those opportunities for things that we can fund. But essentially the formula is driving that increase in such a way that there's not a lot of way for us to avoid it or find other mechanisms to pay for it. We have to find those opportunities of other things that might be desirable to fund. And so I think at this point, because we're looking at $6 million increase in 4 or 5 years, it's so substantial that just creates a hardship to try to identify where that's going to come from.
Along those same lines, I have those same feelings, right? So if every homeowner kicked in $250, we wouldn't have a problem, right? We could voluntarily tax ourselves. to the extent we wanted to. The thing about it is, 2 years ago, we put in place this One Heart, One Lovejoy Fund, or I think it was a year ago. Don't want to misstate that, but we've had the option and the opportunity to directly impact our bottom line and our budget. The problem is we can't budget on assumptions and hopes and dreams. We got to budget on things that we know we can capture. And what I would say about looking 6 years forward at 80 days, 80 days is not 90 or 120, it's 80. And so for us to hopefully avoid future tax increases, the effort along those lines, if that willingness and desire and those statements are truly how people feel, the opportunity for us to take advantage of that now going forward, so that when we do get to 6 years from now, we're not looking at another situation, then the time is now. But for us to plan it now, that's what needed to happen 6 years ago. So hopefully by making the hard decisions now, looking forward with projections and assumptions that allow us to envision what that looks like going forward, that we're painting a picture for the community to understand the hardships that we face and the limitations that we have available to us to fund the district, and or based on the budget process we've gone through is to what we can do to fix it prior to going to this point of asking for additional tax revenue. So I think about those same things. I've heard those same comments and I don't disagree. It's an easy fix in concept. The problem is it has to actually happen. And we can't budget based on what we hope.
We've got to build a balanced or surplus budget to get back to where we need to be on fund balance and be able to pay our teachers what we need to
For certainty.
with certainty. And I applaud the work that's been done to get us to a better place financially through your efforts and your staff and through this financial sustainability committee. And I think we're on a good path. And I think that what you're proposing makes sense to me.
But to your point, I think it's also an opportunity for us to start talking now about the future need, because we don't want to be reactionary. We had to be reactionary in the past.
Yeah, and we're planning for the future too, through what you've talked about with the deferred maintenance of facilities and some of the work that's still ongoing in that area, right? That's
Right.
the other side of the budget that we're not talking about now on the INS side. So,
Or we're more healthy, thankfully.
Yeah.
Because we're retiring debt quicker than is amortized, or we have the potential to. So anyway, just expanding the thoughts. I have the same thoughts as well, Jason.
It may be too early, and it also may be too much of an unknown, but with the legislature convening in 23 and what looks like to be a recapture nightmare that's about to hit in 2024 and not only affect Lovejoy, but other districts in the state of Texas, I'm hoping that there's some initiatives in the 23 session to be able to tweak, adjust, or shave off some of this recapture formulation based on the situation that a lot of school districts are in right now, where home values are going up everywhere and enrollment is flat or slightly decreasing everywhere. So it's not just a Lovejoy problem. This is a statewide problem, particularly a North Texas problem, I would think. And so hopefully we can get some lobbying efforts and some initiatives around maybe some reform with respect to recapture.
I'd like to see some organization proactive within the district as we get ready for that next legislative session, to where hopefully we could help positively influence it.
Agree.
I move to approve the 2022-2023 budget and proposed tax rate as presented.
So moved, Jason James. Second, Jeff Wood. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And thank you for the discussion. Item 20, consider an act on a 2022-2023 compensation plan.
So we provided the draft of the compensation plan. And of course, we went over this presentation at the June workshop briefly, but just to highlight some of the items that we've discussed as we move into this compensation plan that would be approved for 22-23. All of the items that we'll highlight here have been included in the budget process. And we know that this is an important component of our district initiatives and the priorities the board has set for the future of the district. And so we have some updates here that you'll see as we speak to just the compensation plan document itself that we implement and use in the coming year. We've aligned it to the assumptions we've used in the budget forecasting process. So that of course includes, like I said before, the 22-23 rolling in of the current year step increase that was received and the 1% increase on top of that. And so there's a little example here of what that looks like. So you'll see the 1% reflected in those step increases. They used to vary really anywhere from 0.5% to 1.5%. So it's been made consistent across the board. We've also implemented the market assessment adjustments, and any of the ranges that were associated with those were adjusted in the compensation plan. So in addition to that, the employment qualifications for an increase in our current plan for this year was set at 90 days. So any employee that was hired 90 days or less before the end of this fiscal year were not eligible for an increase going into 22-23. So for next year's compensation plan, we're reducing that to 45 days to be more competitive. And hopefully not have folks come to work in Lovejoy towards the end of the year and not be eligible for that compensation increase. There have been some changes to stipends. We have grandfathered, for example, the STEM stipend. It's not listed there. Current employees have been grandfathered in. But then again, just kind of going in alignment with what other districts are doing and the delineation and some of those stipends. The layout of hiring ranges and various positions and titles and number of days. You've heard a lot of conversations about the reorganizations and the savings as a result of those reorganizations throughout the year and staffing efficiencies going into next year. So we've just realigned some of those things in the plan to make sure that they're matching. The guest educator pay for day 22 and over is going to be $250 a day, and the licensed speech path subs will earn $150 a day. So those are just adjustments made to continue to help us with some of those positions. And then some stipends and supplemental pays have been adjusted according to people's duties as we do every year. And so at this point, we're presenting the final draft of the compensation plan for 2022-23 for your consideration.
Thank you for that work and those adjustments. We wanted to accomplish this, and it was important for us to get it done. So thank you for the work.
I appreciate the clarity around the step and what that means, and being very clear that we're doing right by people. So thank you.
We have a lot of great people in the back who've been working on that.
Questions? I think we've gone over it. I know we've gone over it quite a bit in relation to prior budgets for sure. And the lack of clarity there.
So
If
I
not-
make a motion that we consider and act on the 2022-23 compensation plan.
To approve it. Yep. Second, Marvin Bobo. Motion made by Amy Smith, second Marvin Bobo. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item 21, consider an act on the Lovejoy 2030 strategic plan.
Thank you, Mr. President and Board. Thank you, Mr. President and Board. Presented for you, we have our Lovejoy 2030 strategic plan. As you will recall, throughout the spring, we had a committee of stakeholders that worked on our Lovejoy 2030 strategic plan development. That was a stakeholder-based effort. We're very proud of their efforts. We presented to you on that process as well as the results. Do keep in mind that this included the Lovejoy 2030 Strategic Planning Committee effort and outcomes, as well as our Financial Sustainability Committee work and their outcomes as well. Compiled for you comprehensively is the result of that work, which will hopefully tonight become our formal strategic plan. And this is posted publicly for public review as well.
Having been a part of 2 strategic planning sessions and ran other strategic planning operations, I was thoroughly impressed with the interaction by our students, who are absolutely brilliant and contributed in such a major way to every part of this, as well as the community members and staff. And I also appreciate the organization with which it was ran. We initiated a prior strategic planning effort, if the community doesn't know, prior to Ms. Cordell coming on board, and it was I would say nothing short of a disaster. So I appreciate this. I appreciate the scalability and the opportunity we have to affect real change with a plan that can live and grow and breathe with us. So I'm excited to see the work continue to materialize and mature.
I would just echo some of those things. It was a very well-planned, well-executed process. Being able to meet and get to know some of the staff and teachers better and hear their concerns and their aspirations from the ground floor, from the front line, if you will. That was really interesting and valuable to me. And so I applaud you and the team and the effort and all the cabinet members that helped run the process and keep everyone engaged for 3 full days, which is not an easy thing to do. And also I felt like everybody who walked out of those sessions felt like those 3 days were time well spent, that they had a voice, that they were able to give input and receive output and understand better where it is that we want to go. And so I just think it was a well-run, very valuable process. So.
Yeah, and now we have real actionable items that are real improvements that we can really make. And they had a voice from every body that needed a voice. So I think it's awesome. I'm excited to see it.
One of the things I felt like was getting lost previously was the reflection of what the community wanted for the future of the school. And I feel like both the financial sustainability and the strategic planning process allowed that vision and those things to be brought out, vetted, discussed in great detail, and then made actionable through this process, which to me is what this is all about. So a plan that reflects the values and the future focus of our community, I think, is what we have before us. Questions for Ms. Cordell? If not, I'd consider a motion.
Accept and approve the Lovejoy 2030 strategic plan.
Jeff Wood. So moved, Jeff Wood, second, Ann Smith, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, 22 is cabinet reports.
Good evening. So we've heard a little bit about the finance side and what we've been doing there. We're excited to spend a little time over the July 4th break, rolling the budget and getting everything ready for everybody to return. On the project side, we finally got our concession stand heaters. I don't think we need them this week, but they are finally in place. So that is the final event of our winter storm repairs from a year ago. So we'll be excited to close out that claim. The salvage items, we have sold all the portables. You may see that some of them are still remaining. Some of the buyers are still getting their permits for where they are relocating them to, but getting all of that done. And looking at removing as our, some of the folks in this area are moving offices, looking at getting rid of some additional items through another salvage item auction shortly, probably a little bit later this summer. The LCDC playground, you may notice that the canopy is complete, and that is much more timely than the heaters. So as the sun is shining on those babies this summer, they'll be a little bit better protected. And so now that'll give us an opportunity to kind of pivot back and look at any of the other ancillary work we may want to do to finish up that area. The gym floors, our Sloan Creek Auxiliary Gym floor replacement will probably start in mid to late June. It should be complete before school starts. And then we are scheduling the screen and recoats for the middle school and high school gyms. We're working on scheduling for the transportation concrete. We have ordered the equipment for the Puster Playground. Those seem to take a long time, but we're hopeful. So that may be a little bit of a longer project, but fortunately, since it kind of sits on the end of the playground, they'll still be able to use everything that they have until that's complete. The power factor correction project that will be implemented for the high school in Puster should start in mid-July. That equipment has been ordered. It just takes a while to get capacitors right now, but it should be in place before school starts. We have looked at some updates to the Child Development Center and the annex as a whole, and just kind of how we're currently using it, for example, for this meeting, and some updates to entry and security that we might want to make. I did get a quote right before the board meeting, but we're looking at some of those options. I'm waiting on another one, so we can see if that's something we want to implement in the near future. And last but not least, we're excited about the auxiliary job fair. If you are here and you are an employee, we hope you'll help us recruit and potentially earn $300 for recruiting an auxiliary employee. If you're not an employee, we'll hope you just do it because you're nice. But I'm sure the HR group does a great job of getting the word out on things like that. So we're hopeful that will help us. Other than that, we're doing all of our summer cleaning. We have looked under several things. We still have a lot of work to do.
Pictures for you, Jack.
But that's what it looks like underneath the portables. We haven't found any varmint or anything like that, but additional recovery will be forthcoming so that it looks better once they're all gone and school starts. But I just thought you might want to see what it looks like underneath there,
Under there.
isn't it? So that's all I have for you in the way of additional updates.
Ones that Hart also.
They are going as well. Yes, sir.
Anything under those?
I'll bring you additional pictures as we move on. More items.
Scary.
Actually, Jennifer, there have been a few varmints coming out from under those. There, it's right outside my office. We've noticed a few of them. So.
Could you get a picture next time?
I will. Well, one of them was during an interview, I think. So it was a little distracting. So they were. So it's been a process. Okay, I wanted to give you an update on Child Development Center. Things are really coming together on this and we are so excited. We've got our staffing almost complete on that. Again, we've done had an opportunity to do some reorganization within the department as well too. And really, I think are really going to capitalize on strengths and really grow this program. So wanted just to revisit that. And this was brought a few months ago, just how we're funding our Child Development Center, that our pre-kindergarten, which is new for 2022, 23, for 4-year-olds, they have to be 4 by September 1st. Students can qualify if they meet eligibility for high quality pre-K, or it's tuition based too. So funding from that comes from our ADA and our tuition. We made some projections. We're getting pretty close to those projections. It's one of those that I think, because it is new for our community, it's kind of word of mouth, and we're really trying to market that on social media and get some more information out. So we hope to have more. It's kind of like our kindergarten enrollment too. It's just really getting out, and word of mouth, I think, will help over time. Then with our childcare, infant through 0 through 18 months, and we are going to continue that through the 22-23 school year, but we'll be sunsetting that after. That was a cost to the district, and just the staffing for that is challenging to cover that. So, but we will have it through next year. We also have our 18 to 24 months class that is tuition funding, and it's financially sustainable. 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and then of course our big profit is our after school care, our pre-K through 6th grade students. So just again, want to reiterate that we are self-sustaining financially, and I did put 18 months there because again, the infant does not, but what we are making on the other does offset that at this time. And then we are using the funds. We are what did you call it, Jennifer? Not repurposing some of those funds, recoding, that's what I wanted to say, for the grant that we did receive from that as well too. And there are some other additional Texas workforce grants we are monitoring. There was one that came out that we're looking at that could help with some recruitment for our childcare workers. So we're investigating that to see if that's something that we might qualify for as well. So questions?
Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank Jennifer for helping us and working with our recruitment measures that we hope to get in place. And as we've said, if you know anyone, we are hiring. So always looking for those recommendations. Lovejoy Scholars Program and tuition. I was optimistic at the very beginning of the year, but really, really excited at renewal and siblings. We had 218, which is the $4,000 tuition. The new 39 students have applied and have been accepted for 257. We have waitlisted or pending. Pending means that we're waiting either for the end of the year report card or star scores or something like that. Waitlisted was just, we did not have room for students there. Yes, second grade, there are 6 in second grade mainly, and 2 of those are siblings. And we're watching the numbers closely. In fact, we had a discussion about it today. We're hoping to get them here. If we can get a few more kids to enroll so we could hire another teacher, that would be great. But yes, we weren't able to take 1 second grader because our numbers were so tight. Sorry. Tuition, first one's July 15th. We've had, about 15% already pay that, which is good. The collections are coming in. We're sending out information about that now. We're working with Nancy Lessner and Ashley Manning about that. So we're getting that, the funds in right now, which is great. And so if you look at this, we're really close to that. If you look at that 220, which is about, let's see, 80%. So 8 siblings. So that's where it is. So we have 218, of course, 84%. So pretty close to the 85% there, which I was glad we were in that last column because we thought we might be in that first column. So that was nice, a pleasant surprise. Here, we're about 14%. So between the 600, about 600,000 there. So pretty excited about that also. Questions for me about Lovejoy Scholars? I have learned a lot about scholars this year, lots and lots. Next year, we'll be starting this process earlier.
Great work. Thank you.
You're welcome.
As you guys know, we hit the ground running with our athletic camps and fine arts camps, which fall underneath student services. There's a lot more camps going on, but these are the 2 really that fall underneath student services. We started our camps, our athletic camps, the first week of summer. We offered 9 camps for boys, 9 camps for girls, and we're finishing up most of those. We'll have a couple of camps right after a 2-week break. I know tennis will be coming up after that break, but all in all, we'll have right around 1,500 campers who will have participated in one sport or another. We also have our fine arts. There's a list of all the camps, the athletic camps. We also have our fine arts camps. If you have nothing to do, this Friday at 1 o'clock, our summer musical camp, which has been going on last week and this week, will be doing their final production of the Jungle Book. And it's about an hour production. And if you've never seen 3rd through 6th graders put on a play, it is worth the price of admission, which is free. But it is definitely worth your time. In the fine arts camp, there were 32 campers who are going to participate in the musical. Those are the 3rd through 6th graders. We have 7 interns, which are 7th and 8th graders who are learning from our high schoolers to be counselors. And then we have 35 high school student counselors who are showing the elementary kiddos just what it is, what it means to be a part of a musical, the different aspects of theater. And really this to me is the epitome of what Lovejoy is about. You have our older students mentoring our middle schoolers and our younger kids to learn something that they're interested in. I know some of those third through sixth graders, this is the first time they've ever been a part of this. So they're just wetting their palate, and it's something that gets them excited and interested and connected to going into their middle school years. We also have a beginning orchestra camp, which will begin the week before our teachers come back. So July 25th through the 29th, and it's specifically for sixth graders. Last year, we had 40 campers. This year, we're projecting around 50 students because our orchestra program is growing. There's much more interest in it. So we'll have about 50 students. That's the projected number that we'll have in our beginning orchestra camp. So just wanted to recap what has gone on the first 2 weeks. It's only been 2 weeks, or I think 2 weeks. But there's been a lot going on. If you go up there, the tennis courts are full, the softball field's full, baseball, the two back practice fields. It's pretty neat to watch the engagement of the coaches and all the different age groups that are being able to take part in those. Oh, I'm sorry. I do have one more thing. We were able to hire a director of transportation and athletic facilities. His name is Steve Neal, and he'll be coming over to us from Plano ISD. He serves currently as the Assistant Director of Transportation in Plano ISD. One of the questions was, what are your connections as far as recruiting bus drivers, a mechanic? And I'll just say that those connections have paid off so far. So we're really looking forward to Steve joining us, just having somebody who's very well grounded, versed in running a transportation department, as well as his organizational skills to help on the facility side of it too. This is a budget neutral position, so we've combined a couple of open positions to create this position. So Mr. Neal is one of the things that he mentioned too is he sees some opportunities for us to be more fiscally responsible and creative with our finances, to acquire new buses, to update new buses. One of the things now is going green with your buses and having electric buses, which obviously would decrease the amount of fuel that you needed. And he's very well versed in how potentially transitioning into that area, that space. So, yes, ma'am.
Who oversees all of the events when their facilities are being rented out this summer? Like, for example, there are baseball tournaments galore happening with 5 Tool and other organizations, which is fabulous.
Mhm.
Does that fall on someone like Steve, or does that fall on our coach?
It will.
I know he's coming. So
For the high school, facilities, Coach Ross has really reorganized that to whatever facility they're using, the head coach oversees that too. Coach Lewis, Sean Lewis, is kind of overseeing the whole thing, but it specifically falls on that particular head coach.
All right, Ms. Cordell.
I am exceptionally proud and grateful to our central office administration, our campus administration, and very excited that everyone is approaching a break. And so, oh, we missed one. Oh, did we? We did. My apologies.
I'm thankful it's not almost midnight. I think last time that's when I came up, I'm like, my brain and mouth was not working together. Wanted just to circle back around. In March, we had staff members on the general education side of the house and special education side of the house that were part of our action team. And so we talked about at that time some goals that were set through the work. It started just backing up a little bit, a needs assessment for students who receive services through special education, really getting input from staff, from teachers, both general education and special education, doing observation on campuses, bringing key stakeholders from the campuses back around the table. And then we came up with some goals, and really it was around student achievement. So really addressing reading. We know that's the pathway for success for student reading proficiency, to continue to make sure that we keep and retain our staff. And that's important. You've heard that just through all our areas tonight, and then continue with staff development. And so wanted to share just a little bit of how some of these are connected already, just some action pieces through the work that we're doing at Learning in Lovejoy. And what that means, if you're not familiar with it, staff come. This year it's going to be August 2nd through the 5th. And so the curriculum department, along with the principal principals, fine arts, athletics really all got together and started looking what are needs in all of the areas. And then we started just refining down from there to make sure, regardless of what your role is, we even have opportunities for our front office staff on campuses to continue to build their skills. And so tying it back to here, we definitely have sessions that will help support all three of the areas that the action team put in place. As a reminder, this is the goal, you guys. Has not changed when it was reported out in March of just increasing reading proficiency. So what we'll be doing is looking at our end of the year data for 2022 and look at comparison, because we are looking for a percentage in growth. Actually, our STAR scores and all of that data are just now coming in. So we'll have some time to be able to look at that before school starts. Some sessions, as you can see on here, we have focus sessions, and really those are more priority. Some of that will be campus administrators will be tapping into staff if that's an area that they're still needing to grow in. And we have supporting sessions here. So you can see definitely when we look at embedding reading strategies across content areas, creating classroom environments to support phonics instruction, and creating a student-centered classroom through instructional strategies are all key things that will support in the area of reading. But you can see there's many down below, and really it's pre-K through 12 options as well. So it was really important that we looked at making sure that we have sessions that will appeal to all staff, regardless of what grade level that they're supporting. Staff retention, even though the goal is set to look at 2026, and a lot of that had to do is as we were looking at efficiencies and some restructuring, we wanted to make sure that we were able to start in a somewhat normal year. I'm not sure if that's even a word anymore, but that doesn't mean that we stop there. And so we always, again, the intent to keep our staff and support the growth in them. Here's some sessions at Learning in Lovejoy. Now, outside of investing in staff and professional development, and that's generally a question I would say in interviews we get a lot from staff of really what professional development opportunities do I have? And so we do get the opportunity to share that the district does invest time and energy and money in supporting staff. But even narrowing it down more to looking at focus sessions, leading change when change is hard. And, you know, the information's out there, not just around education. A lot of professions are really struggling with keeping staff, but education has been hit pretty hard. And so we want to continue to help build our educators and keep them here and continue to fill their buckets. There's going to be campus breakout sessions, and that's really allows our principals to really take a lot of the key strands through Learning in Lovejoy. So our professional learning community work, especially, well, a thread will be pulled through. So they really get that face time during the last day of learning in the second and last day of Learning in Lovejoy to do that work with their campus and principals. And that allows them to be able to see where's the strength, especially if they're new staff. It allows us to get to know them and how do we support. The curriculum instruction staff will be there as well supporting, and that also allows us to have face time and see how we can best support and develop as the year goes on, because every campus kind of has their unique areas that they're going to want to focus on, and we want to be a support for them. Again, we also have supporting sessions here. So continuing to make sure that we're communicating with students as well as parents of what's going on campuses. And so giving our teachers some tools. If that's not their strength, we want to help beef that up for them. And then building a solid foundation for PLCs, and that's the professional learning communities. You've heard us talk about this. Dr. Tinsley has shared that in some of her presentations, but it's really around collective ownership of students and all students. And so we've started some work in the spring and definitely will continue to pull that thread through. There's actually mandatory sessions for PLCs for all staff that will go through during Learning in Lovejoy, and then they will have some optional sessions that they can pick that's in their particular either content or field that they're hired for. And then professional development. Again, we wanted to make sure that we're working on helping build capacity on accommodations and modifications. And we do have sessions already in place that will be at Learning in Lovejoy that staff will be able to go to. The other part that we're doing, if a staff member for some reason wasn't able to see a session, we are recording them as well. So we'll have that bank to be able to refer back to. And sometimes it's nice to see it, if you've seen it once, to go back and see it again, because as you get in there and start applying the information you learn when students arrive, you may go, hey, I know it sounded good, but I want to go back and just refresh. And then, of course, here we have supporting sessions, whether it's using technology, accelerating instruction. We have classroom management opportunities, how to use data. Aware is a program that we have a lot of our assessments in there. And so how to use that to drive instruction and support students who may need some additional help. Questions? The other thing I did not put in here is we do have training that will be coming through our dyslexia grant that the district was awarded, as well as our autism grant, but that's not going to happen during Learning in Lovejoy because it's already action packed. So we're looking at ways to make sure that we get those particular areas, which are very important, provided. And some of them will be throughout the year along with some job embedded coaching in there, but that's the reason why they were not in this particular presentation around Learning in Lovejoy. The other part, and I think, Jason, you may have asked me that, the parent piece, so the action team and kind of the tie, I think your question was, how do we get parents involved when they originally spoke? We're actually doing some planning meeting with the SAGE reps to be able to have the input from campus SAGE chairs to be able to give us input on what are some additional either needs, training, supports, communication that we can support that. So that'll be a little bit later in the summer. We're trying to get everybody's schedule to align, but definitely that's on our radar.
Sorry about that, Sancy. That was my fault. And
That's
thank you.
okay.
Thank you for the work we're doing here.
Yeah, no, I'm thankful it's not midnight, so I'm happy.
All right. Ms. Cordell.
Well, school has been out for a bit, but our central office and our campus administrators have been working very hard. They are facing a break hopefully here, and I'm excited for them to have that and grateful to them for all of their incredible work in making sure this school year was a success and in planning forward to next school year. There must be something wrong with me because I am already excited about day one of Learning in Lovejoy and the first day of school because I'm been in all these meetings with the planning and the forward thinking and all the things that are in the works for a phenomenal school year, next school year. But I do want our administrators to have a wonderful, restful break and reconnect with their families and the things that bring them personal joy. I would also like to formally welcome Rodrika Taylor to the board setting and to cabinet. She is our new coordinator for the superintendent and board services, and she has already been a remarkable addition to our team. So welcome, Rodrika.
Welcome. All right, public comments related to non-agenda items.
Mr. President Owens, at this time, we have 2 public comments related to non-agenda items. I kindly present Carla Gant to the mic as your first presenter.
Ms. Gant, thank you for stepping up. Let me run through a few things here, just legality was. Any individuals seeking to speak public comment session of a regular board meeting must complete and submit a public comment card by no later than 15 minutes prior to the designated start time of the meeting notice. Public comment cards must be completed in their entirety with accurate and truthful information and must designate whether the speaker is speaking on a specific agenda item. Failure to designate an agenda item relevant to the speaker's comments will result in classification of the public comments being non-agenda. The board will provide speakers that submit a public comment card on an agenda item the opportunity to speak prior to the board's consideration of an item. Public comment cards are only applicable to the meeting in which they are completed and submitted by the established deadline. Each individual gets one opportunity per meeting to share their comments with the Board of Trustees, not multiple. If a speaker is not present when his or her name is called, the speaker forfeits the opportunity to speak. The comments must be made by the speaker at public comment reflect the opinion solely of the speaker and not of the Board of Trustees. The board reserves the right to change the order of the agenda. Each speaker will be provided 3 minutes to address the board in accordance to our board policy. If at any time in the opinion of the presiding officer, the individual is attempting to address a non-agenda item in the agenda. Sorry, a non-agenda item, I can move it to the non-agenda section. The presiding officer designee may stop the speaker and defer the speaker's comments to the appropriate portion of the meeting. Disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. And if after the provision of a single warning, the disruptive behavior continues, the disruptive individual may be escorted out of the meeting by a district official. It's a criminal offense to disrupt a meeting with the intent or to prevent or disrupt a lawful meeting, to substantially obstruct or interfere with the ordinary conduct of a meeting by physical action or verbal utterance. Failure to yield time. Failure to yield the podium at the conclusion of a time is disruption of a meeting. Comments made by the to the Board of Trustees by meeting attendees and or speakers outside of the designated comment period is considered disruption of a meeting. And this is all by Texas Penal Code 4201 and board policy. Just a reminder that the board does not comment or engage you on your public comment or on your public comments. Thanks. All right, 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thanks for taking my comment, and I wanted to voice my concerns regarding the health curriculum that's currently under review. I've reviewed a lot of this curriculum recently and this past fall because I went to Austin with a group of moms and spoke to our state board of educators on behalf of parents who had concerns about this proposed curriculum. Our own Representative Pam Little voted no on all the curriculum proposed in the fall, including Goodhart Wilcox and Quaverette, which are both on the list that's suggested for Lovejoy. These publishers infringe on parental authority and rights by encouraging our children to make decisions independent of parental guidance. This contradicts Texas Education Code 26.001, which states that parents are partners with educators. There are multiple areas in these texts that refer our children to, quote, trusted adults, counselors, healthcare workers, hotlines, and even websites with chat rooms with no mention of parents at all. Page 223 of Goodhart Wilcox teaches our teens that, quote, there are many ways teens can get help for mental health conditions and illnesses. Talk to your school counselor, school nurse, or doctor to find a therapist that can help you. No parents. On the same page, it teaches that information they share about their mental health cannot be shared with anyone else, including, quote, their family members. It goes on to say when seeking help, they should talk to, quote, an adult you trust, such as a teacher, nurse, or other relative, with no mention of parents. But these are two examples of many instances in the text where the role of parents are omitted. Section B of TEC 28.004 states a school district must consider the recommendation of the local health advisory council before changing the district's health education curriculum or instruction. TEC 28.004 states that the SHAC duties include in section 2, recommending policies, procedures, strategies, and curriculum appropriate for specific grade levels designed to prevent physical health concerns, including obesity, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and mental health concerns through coordination of D, parental involvement. Section 6 states the SHAC is to recommend strategies to increase parental awareness regarding issues, including mental health and other issues listed in there. The recent incident of inappropriate text messages sent by a much-loved LHS teacher shows the inherent danger when parents.
Unfortunately, Ms. Gant, that's the end of your time. President Owens, any comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. I kindly present your next presenter, Amy Campbell, for a public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us to speak. And I'm also speaking tonight on the proposed health curriculum that's before the SHAC and that they will be making recommendation to the boards that you will be voting on, things that you'll be voting on. So I also went to Austin to listen to the state board as they discussed, and they listened to parent concerns about the curriculum that was being proposed. There were few options that were available. And like Carla said, our state board trustee, Pam Little, voted no on all of them. So I've also been looking at the curriculum, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do that. And I went to the last SHAC meeting, and I realized that several of our SHAC members are still, were at least at that time, had not reviewed it all. So they were new and they needed time to look at it, which I appreciated that they didn't make any judgments on it until they had the time to look at it. So I appreciate that. But I just want to point out some things to consider as we can't make public comment to them. So if they're watching or listening, maybe they will see some of the things that they might want to think about and that y'all might want to consider as you consider the curriculum. One thing is that the digital format of these textbooks is dynamic, so they can change. And the publisher does not have to let you know that they've changed them. So if they change them and it then infringes on what our community values are or what the SHAC has recommended them, the reason why the SHAC has recommended them, then it's up to Lovejoy ISD to get them into alignment, because the contract with the publisher is with Lovejoy and the publisher, not with the state. At least this is my understanding. I could be wrong, but something to think about and to check into. Also, does the publisher collect or store any data on our kids through surveys or questionnaires or any website that they might go to or whatever on these sites? So if the answer to that is yes, I know the state board has said that they want to have a state database, if they have any database, not a national one. I personally prefer no database, because I think it's unfair to our children to steal away their freedoms, their liberties, and most importantly, their privacy. Who's using this information down the road? Where will this information come back to greet them again? We have no idea. And also, does the curriculum direct students to speak to a trusted adult, or does it tell them to speak to their parent? We are a very active community of very involved parents. And we just demonstrated this whole night about the 2030 committee and everything else about how we have community engagement with our parents and our students and how we value that. And if there is any time that we want our kids talking to their parents, it's about very personal issues that come up with, whether it's health education, sex education, whatever. So I encourage you to consider that as you're voting. Also, how does any of the things in the curriculum affect SIPA? And that is the
Ms.
child.
Campbell,
Internet
thank you
Protect-
for your comments. President Owens, there are no further public comments related to non-agenda items. Amy, Carla, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I wanted to just take a minute and say thank you to our staff, our administration, to Ms. Cordell, to our teachers, to everyone involved here as we wrap up and go on summer break. The work that's been done this last year is remarkable, and we've certainly faced challenges that we knew about and some that we didn't. And we've done it, you all have done it in a way that gives me great confidence about the challenges we're going to have ahead of us that we don't know about right now. So I just want to applaud you all on that work and the way you've gone about doing it. And just wish you all a wonderful summer. On behalf of the board, I just want to say thank you and wish you well this summer. So look forward to seeing you back. And with that, we would be adjourned.